Today we're going to launch a brand new series. We're going to be doing an in-depth look at all the top 5 prospects for every NHL team. We're going to start with the North Division in Canada, and we're kicking things off with the Montreal Canadiens, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we're starting a new series today. Actually, we're kind of bringing back an old series. I did not do this series in 2020, but I did do it a couple of times previously to that. We did a 2018 and 19 series looking at all 31 NHL teams' top prospects. So today, how we're going to do this is a little bit of a different format. If you've been around for a while and seen my past top prospect videos, what I'm going to do today is I want to take a look at not only the players that are coming up and are ready to join the ranks here in the near future, but I also want to take a look at the top young players already on the roster. So I'm going to do a quick recap of what I'm calling the top 5 under 25. So your top 5 players that are under the age of 25 on the team, and then we're going to take a look at the top 5 prospects already in the system as well that are, the next ones coming up here soon, to kind of give an overall analysis of how the youth is for all of these NHL teams and who kind of has the brightest future. So as I mentioned, we're starting with Montreal in the North Division here today. We'll go through each division one at a time just to shake things up, go in a different order here. So let's kick things off with the Montreal Canadiens top 5 under 25, and then we'll jump into the top prospects. Now, obviously, when you look at the top 5 under 25 with Montreal, you have to start with Nick Suzuki. I mean, obviously, Suzuki is one of their top players right now, the forward garnering the most ice time. Obviously, it was a great pickup in the trade from the Vegas Golden Knights, a 2017 first-round pick, one of a few that Vegas had, and parted with to acquire Max Pacioretty. Of course, Montreal also acquired Tomas Tatar in that deal as well. So now that trade is paying off in dividends, so that's a great pickup. Nick Suzuki is only 21 years old, so he still has lots of room to grow, but already being the most responsible forward on the Habs roster that Claude Julien's using in all situations certainly sets them up for great things down the road, and he's likely going to be their top center iceman for the foreseeable future. Now, we also have 20-year-old Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who was their first-round pick in the 2018 NHL draft, taken number 3 overall. Of course, Montreal did pretty well in the draft lottery that year and got to move up to the number 3 spot. They did have some options for players that came after Kotkaniemi, and it was somewhat of a, I guess you could say, a controversial pick at the time. You got Brady Tkachuk went right after. Quinn Hughes went a couple picks later. I know there was a bit of a divide in the fan base on who they wanted, but at the time, the Habs were still not nearly as deep enough down the center position, and Marc Bergevin had his sights set on making sure that changed with that draft, with Kotkaniemi being the highly rated center, the highest rated center in that draft class. So clearly he went number 3 overall and is turning out to be a pretty good player for them. We'll see where he fits long term. I see him likely being more of a second line player, not quite as the upside of Suzuki, but still a really nice piece for Montreal and should fit for them for a long time. Now, you also have the 21-year-old rookie defenseman, Alexander Romanov, coming over from Russia in the KHL. I mean, Romanov's been drafted now for a few years. The Habs have been patiently waiting to get him to North America. He's a second-round pick in the 2018 NHL draft, of course, in the same draft as Kotkaniemi here, but he's come in and fit in quite nicely on that Montreal blue line. Really not looking out of place at all for a rookie, and likely going to be in contention for Calder Trophy, I would think. I mean, he's got a lot of energy. He's always moving. He's always going. Seems to really love the game. Seems like he's always one of the last guys on the ice for practice. Can never get enough. So he's always trying to get better, always trying to improve, and I can really see him being the mainstay there on the blue line for a long, long time. You got guys like Weber and Petrie are still great veterans on that blue line as well, but he'll be there long after they're retired and will be a big piece for them moving forward here. Now, a couple other players I'm going to include in this as well includes center iceman Jake Evans. Now, Jake Evans was a 7th-round pick way back in 2014, so he's taken the long road to get to the NHL, but he's really carved out a spot for him. He got more ice time during the return-to-play bubble in the 2020 playoffs, and then this year started off being the regular 4th-line center. And I must say, even though he's a little bit older, a little bit more mature of a prospect here, he's really jumped into the NHL and grabbed a spot with Montreal. And so he's a valuable player who's doing well. I mean, he's not a huge piece for them, but he's somebody that they need to kind of stabilize that bottom 6. And to me, he's a player who could stick with them in the long haul, be a guy they can keep on really, fairly cheap, valuable contracts, but still play a key part of the forward group. The last player I'm going to include in the top 5 under 25 here is Victor Mete. Now, I know Victor Mete has a lot of trade rumors around him about the fact that he wants out and get a fresh start. And it's really not that he doesn't want to be in Montreal. He just wants more of an opportunity to play, which you really can completely understand here. But Mete is 22 years old, has a fair bit of NHL experience to his name. He seems to have a pretty bright future at this point. I only included him because there's really no other players on the roster outside of Mete that are under the age of 25. A guy like Jonathan Drouin barely missed a cutoff because he's just over 25. So you can kind of throw him in there as a player as well who's still fairly young. And really has seemed to have found his game since the emergence of Nick Suzuki. I think Suzuki was exactly what Drouin needed. And to me, he's a much better player with Suzuki. But Nick Suzuki, to me, he kind of reminds me a little bit. I mean, he plays a different position, but he has the impact and the effect of like a guy like Mark Stone. He just seems to have an ability to make everybody around him better. And he's really been very helpful to me for Jonathan Drouin picking up the pace here and being a more productive Montreal Canadian. He doesn't look lost anymore. It looks like he's got a spot that he fits well and can remain there for some time. So now before we jump into the top 5 prospects, I just want to quickly go over what I use for criteria here. Now, some players, if they're already on the active roster right now, I wasn't considering them a prospect anymore, or if they've played less than 40 games are also still eligible. So some guys tend to go up and down between the NHL and the minors for a few years. If they're under 40 games played, then I still consider them a prospect. Now, when it comes to being eligible for Rookie of the Year in their Calder Trophy, it is less than that. I believe it's 25 or 26 games is the cutoff. But I went with a 40-game plateau just because there's a lot of players around the league that have kind of gone up and down here since being drafted the past couple of seasons. So let's dive in and take a look here at who I feel are the top 5 prospects for the Montreal Canadiens. Now, first up, we've got Kaden Guhle, who I'm ranking as the number 5 prospect here. He's a big defenseman that they drafted in the first round of the 2020 NHL Draft. 19 years old, from Alberta, played his junior hockey so far with the Prince Albert Raiders and would certainly be playing there now if their season was up and running. It looks as though he's likely going to get some time with the Laval Rocket in the American Hockey League while we're waiting on the Western Hockey League to start back up. But I know the coaching staff down there seems to be pretty impressed with him. He had an opportunity to play a bit with Team Canada at the World Juniors. Overall, he is a pretty solid-looking defenseman, pretty good at both ends of the ice, and certainly projects well to be a top left-shooting defenseman for the Habs sometime in the next couple of years. Next up, we have Josh Brooke, who was a second-round pick back in 2017. Of course, Brooke has now had some time to be a pro hockey player in the American Hockey League. Had a solid last season there. Of course, we're waiting for the AHL season to get going here, which should be happening in the very short term. I have Brooke ranked ahead of Guhle, even though I do think Guhle might be the stronger the defenseman long term, to be honest. But I think Brooke, obviously having a little bit more experience, a little bit older, having some more time in the AHL, could get a shot at the Canadiens roster before Guhle does. But Brooke, of course, is a right shot defenseman, put up some pretty good offensive numbers in junior, so we will see if that can translate. His first season in the American Hockey League wasn't a lot of offense, as he's still getting adjusted to the pro game, and we'll see how things go for him this season. Next up, we have Ryan Poehling. I have him ranked as a 3rd top prospect here for Montreal, the left shot center iceman here from the US of A. Of course, had a pretty decent college career, had a really solid tournament a couple times at the World Juniors with Team USA as well. Of course, had a really memorable debut with Montreal, scoring a hat trick in his first game back in the 18-19 season. Of course, last year spent majority of the time in the AHL with some NHL experience as well. Didn't go the best. This year he was originally on the taxi squad, but has been since moved down to be in the minors. So we will see here what Poehling does when the American Hockey League season gets underway. But he's a guy I think has potential to be probably a 3rd-line center. I know some thought after that original game with a hat trick that he was going to be this big offensive star, and I'm not really sure that that's really where he's heading. I think Poehling at best is a 3rd-line forward, but can still be a player and a solid contributor for the Habs if he can have some more solid developmental time this year. Next up, the number 2 prospect I have for Montreal is goaltender Caden Primo, who could very well turn out to be quite the draft steal taken in the 2017 draft. Way down at round number 7, 199 overall. This kid's looking pretty solid so far. Had a couple of solid years at Northwestern University. Turned pro. Had some good time in the AHL. A limited amount of NHL games. Couple of games under his belt. Didn't look too bad as well. Many feel Cayden Primo very well could be the goaltender of the future. Although Carey Price, the current goaltender, is locked up for a long time. They have Jake Allen there as well for a couple more years. Obviously, Allen's going to be, just a short-term player likely for Montreal. But Primo could very well be that guy depending on when the time is right for that transition from Price to Primo. Of course, he's a second-generation NHL player. His father, Keith Primo, was a longtime player and played in the NHL, so he certainly has good DNA to work with and a good, solid goaltender. He's only 21. A lot of goaltenders don't really become full-time in the NHL until they're more like 24, 25. You do have exceptions to that, of course, like a Carter Hart, but, Primo is a guy, I think, in the next couple of years is going to be knocking on the NHL door for a full-time spot and could be a really important piece for them down the road. And number one on my list here today, it shouldn't be a big surprise. We have goal-scoring winger Cole Caufield, of course, taken in the first round of the 2019 NHL draft, slipped down to number 15. Could turn out to be quite a gift and a steal for Montreal at that slot. We'll see how things turn out at the NHL level. Of course, been playing for the University of Wisconsin for the past couple of seasons in college hockey. He's certainly on pace this year to put up much better numbers than his first year, so he's doing well that way in that regard. Didn't have a great World Junior Tournament, though, I will say that. Some people were concerned, but overall, I think he's still on pace to being a great prospect for Montreal. I don't really have any concerns that way. How big of a goal scorer he turns out to be in the NHL, it's hard to say. I mean, he could be a solid 20-goal guy to all the way up to being a 40, 50-goal guy. I think the sky's the limit for this kid. It just depends on how well he adapts to the NHL level. Many expect that when his college season is over later this spring, that he likely will sign his pro contract with Montreal and might even be able to get a couple of games in before the season's over. That is a remote possibility that could happen. And at the very least, I would expect Caufield to be in the Habs' plans for next season. Whether or not he's in the NHL or has to do some time in the American Hockey League first remains to be seen about how the coaching staff feels about him once we hit training camp next year. So just to recap here, as you can see, I think the Habs' future is bright with good young players. Their top 5 prospects were Caufield, Primo, Palin, Brooke, and Guhle, so all kinds of great players in a variety of positions coming up. And they have Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, Romanov, Evans, and Mente under 25 already on their roster. So I think it's fair to say that the Montreal Canadiens have a very bright future. They have all kinds of great youth already impacting the roster and much more on the way. Those are your top 5 under 25 and your top 5 prospects. Of course, I want lots of comments and feedback down below in the comment section, so let me know what you think of these prospects. How would you rank them? Who are you most excited about? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. Stay tuned for the next video coming up in this series very soon as we go through division by division, doing the same format for all 31 NHL teams. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I will catch you next time.